Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Naomi's heart raced. What more could they possibly do to her? But she forced herself to smile eagerly. I can't wait, she said. What's next? Dr. Marsh exchanged a look with Daniel before turning back to Naomi. We believe in learning by doing, she said. It's time for you to put your new skills and identity to the test in a real-world scenario. Daniel handed Naomi a garment bag. Get changed, he instructed. We're going to a party. As Naomi slipped into the skin-tight designer dress and towering heels, she tried to quell the panic rising in her chest. This was moving faster than she had anticipated. She needed to find a way to contact her allies to let them know what was happening. But there was no opportunity. As soon as she was ready, Daniel whisked her away to a waiting car. As they drove through the city, he briefed her on their destination, an exclusive charity gala filled with the kind of high-powered individuals that glamour girls targeted. Your job is simple, Daniel explained. Mingle, charm, gather information. We have several potential clients attending tonight. Your performance will go a long way towards proving your commitment to the organization. Naomi nodded, her mind racing. This could be the chance she had been waiting for, an opportunity to gather real evidence of Glamour Girl's activities. But it was also incredibly risky. One wrong move and her cover would be blown. The gala was being held at a luxurious hotel, its grand ballroom transformed into a glittering wonderland. As Naomi stepped out of the car, camera flashes erupted around her. She plastered on her most dazzling smile, playing the part of the confident supermodel to perfection. Inside, the room was a sea of wealth and influence. Politicians rubbed elbows with tech moguls, while celebrities held court in every corner. Naomi took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Remember, Daniel murmured in her ear, you're not just here to look pretty. We need information. That man over there... He nodded towards a distinguished-looking older gentleman. Senator Harrison. He's been making noise about regulating the beauty industry. See what you can find out about his plans? Naomi nodded, already slipping into character. She snagged a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and made her way towards the senator, her hips swaying seductively. Senator Harrison, she purred, flashing him her most brilliant smile. I'm Naomi. I'm such an admirer of your work. The senator turned, his eyes widening appreciatively as he took in Naomi's stunning appearance. Well, it's not often I'm approached by such a lovely young woman at these stuffy events, he said, his tone jovial but with an undercurrent of lechery. To what do I owe the pleasure? Naomi laughed, a tinkling sound she had perfected during her time with glamour girls. Oh, I find politics fascinating, she said, leaning in conspiratorially. Especially when it intersects with my world. I heard you were working on some new regulations for the beauty industry? Harrison's expression sharpened, becoming more guarded. You seem very well informed for a model, he said, studying her more closely. Naomi didn't miss a beat. Oh, we're not all airheads, you know, she teased. Some of us actually pay attention to the world around us, and when someone starts talking about changing the rules of the game, well, let's just say it gets our attention. She laid a hand on his arm, her touch light but intimate. I'd love to hear more about what you have planned. Maybe over dinner sometime? The senator hesitated for a moment, clearly torn between suspicion and attraction. But Naomi's charm won out. Well, I suppose there's no harm in discussing public policy, he said with a chuckle. Why don't we step out onto the terrace? It's a bit quieter there. As they made their way through the crowded ballroom, Naomi caught Daniel's eye. He gave her a subtle nod of approval before turning back to his own conversation. Out on the terrace, the cool night air was a welcome relief from the stuffy ballroom. Naomi leaned against the railing, positioning herself so that the light from inside fell attractively across her face. So, Senator, she said, her voice low and intimate, tell me all about these regulations you're planning. I'm all ears. Harrison sipped his drink, considering her for a moment before speaking. "Well, it's still in the early stages," he said cautiously. "But we're looking at implementing stricter controls on cosmetic procedures, particularly those involving genetic modification." Naomi's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of information she needed. "Genetic modification?" she asked, feigning innocence. "I didn't realize that was even possible in cosmetic procedures." The senator's expression darkened. "Oh, it's possible, all right. And it's a lot more common than most people realize. We've been getting reports of underground clinics performing radical transformations, changing people's entire appearance, even altering their personalities." He shook his head, disgust evident in his voice. "It's not just a matter of vanity anymore. We're talking about fundamental changes to human identity. It's dangerous, unethical, and it needs to be stopped." Naomi nodded, her mind whirling. She needed to get this information to her allies, but she also had to maintain her cover. "That does sound scary," she said, allowing a hint of worry to creep into her voice. "I had no idea things had gotten so extreme. What kind of regulations are you proposing?" As Harrison launched into a detailed explanation of his plans, Naomi listened intently, committing every word to memory. She asked careful questions, always playing the part of the concerned but somewhat naive model. Inside, however, her thoughts were racing. This was big. If Harrison's regulations went through, it could deal a serious blow to Glamour Girl's operations. No wonder they wanted information on his plans. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Daniel, who approached with a polite smile. "I'm so sorry to intrude," he said smoothly, "but I'm afraid I need to borrow Naomi for a moment. There's someone she simply must meet." Naomi turned to the senator with an apologetic smile. "Duty calls," she said ruefully. "But I've so enjoyed our chat. Perhaps we could continue at another time?" Harrison nodded, clearly reluctant to let her go. "I'd like that," he said, fumbling in his pocket for a business card. "Here, take my private number. We'll set something up." As Daniel led her away, Naomi could feel his approval radiating off him. "Well done," he murmured. "The senator seemed quite taken with you. I trust you got some useful information?" Naomi nodded, her stomach churning with guilt, even as she maintained her pleasant facade. "Oh, yes," she said. "He was very forthcoming. I think he sees me as a potential ally in his crusade." Daniel's smile was predatory. "Excellent. We'll debrief fully later. For now, there's someone else I'd like you to work your magic on." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of champagne, fake laughter, and carefully extracted information. Naomi played her part to perfection, charming and manipulating with a skill that both thrilled and horrified her. By the time they finally left the gala, Naomi's feet were aching and her head was spinning. Partly from the champagne, but mostly from the weight of everything she had learned. In the car on the way back to the Glamour Girls facility, Daniel was effusive in his praise. "You exceeded all expectations tonight," he said. "I think it's safe to say you've proven your loyalty and value to the organization." Naomi managed a tired smile. "I'm glad," she said. "I meant what I said before. I want to fully embrace this life to be the best I can be for Glamour Girls." Daniel nodded, satisfied. "Get some rest," he said as they pulled into the underground garage. "Tomorrow we'll go over everything you learned tonight and start planning our next moves." Back in her room, a much nicer one than before, she noted. Naomi finally allowed herself to relax. She had done it. She had maintained her cover and gathered crucial intelligence. But now came the hard part. She had to find a way to get this information to her allies without arousing suspicion. Naomi waited until she was sure the corridor outside was empty before retrieving her hidden phone. Her fingers shook as she typed out a message summarizing everything she had learned about Senator Harrison's plans and the other bits of intelligence she had gathered throughout the evening. Just as she hit send, a soft knock at the door made her jump. Quickly, she stashed the phone away and smoothed her expression. "Come in," she called, hoping her voice didn't betray her nervousness. The door opened to reveal Dr. Marsh, a mild smile on her face. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said. "I just wanted to check in, see how you're feeling after your first real outing as your new self." Naomi forced herself to relax, to slip back into the role of the eager convert. "It was amazing," she gushed. "I've never felt so confident, so in control. Is this how it always feels?" Dr. Marsh's smile widened. "That's exactly what we want to hear. The integration seems to be progressing beautifully. But just to be sure, I'd like to run a few quick tests, if you don't mind." Naomi's heart raced, but she kept her expression eager. "Of course not," she said. "Whatever you need." As doctor, Marsh set up her equipment. Naomi silently prayed that her message had gone through, that help was on the way, because she had a sinking feeling that her time was running out. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Naomi was constantly on the move, attending parties, photo shoots, and clandestine meetings. She played her part to perfection, charming and manipulating with a skill that both thrilled and horrified her. Through it all, she clung to her core self, to the memory of who she truly was and why she was there. But it was getting harder. The lines between her real identity and her glamour girl's persona were beginning to blur. It didn't help that she hadn't heard back from her allies since that first night. The silence was unnerving. Had something gone wrong? Were they unable to reach her? Or worse, had they abandoned her? Naomi pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on her mission. She had to believe that help was coming. In the meantime, she would continue to gather as much information as possible. Her opportunity came sooner than she expected. One evening, as she was returning from yet another glittering event, Daniel pulled her aside. "We have a situation," he said, his voice low and urgent. "One of our other subjects is showing signs of instability. I need you to talk to her, see if you can bring her back in line." Naomi's heart raced. This could be her chance to make contact with another victim, to potentially gain an ally on the inside. "Of course," she said, infusing her voice with eager compliance. "Whatever I can do to help." Daniel led her to a secure wing of the facility she hadn't seen before. As they walked, he filled her in on the details. "Her name is Olivia," he explained. "She was one of our most successful transformations. A plain Jane turned into a stunning socialite, but lately she's been having doubts, questioning her new identity. We can't afford to have her destabilize further." They stopped outside a nondescript door. Daniel turned to Naomi, his expression serious. "Your job is simple. Talk to her. Remind her of all the benefits of her new life. If necessary, subtly threaten what she stands to lose if she continues down this path. Can you handle that?" Naomi nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Absolutely," she said. "I'll set her straight." As soon as Daniel left, Naomi took a deep breath and entered the room. It was comfortably furnished, but had the unmistakable feel of a prison. Sitting on the bed, looking lost and frightened, was a stunningly beautiful young woman. "Olivia?" Naomi said softly, closing the door behind her. "I'm Naomi. I'm here to talk." Olivia looked up, her eyes wide and wary. Are you one of them?" Naomi hesitated for a fraction of a second before making a decision. She needed to gain Olivia's trust, and quickly. "Not exactly," she said, keeping her voice low. "I'm undercover. I'm here to help." Olivia's expression cycled through disbelief, hope, and fear. "How do I know I can trust you?" she whispered. Naomi moved closer, sitting down next to Olivia on the bed. "Because I know exactly what you're going through," she said. "The confusion, the fear, the feeling that you're losing yourself. I've been there. I'm still there in a way." She took a deep breath before continuing. "But I'm fighting back, and I need your help." Olivia studied her face intently, searching for any sign of deception. Finally, she nodded. "What do you need me to do?" Naomi's mind raced, formulating a plan on the fly. "For now, play along," she said. "Pretend you've come to your senses, that you're fully recommitted to your new identity. It'll buy us time." She glanced at the door, aware that they could be interrupted at any moment. Can you tell me anything about their operations? Anything that might help bring them down?" Olivia nodded, her words tumbling out in a rushed whisper. "They have other facilities," she said. "I've heard them talking. This isn't the only place they're doing this, and it's not just cosmetic changes. They're experimenting with more extreme transformations, changing people's entire personalities, even their memories." Naomi's blood ran cold. This was even bigger than she had realized. "Do you know where these other facilities are?" Olivia shook her head. "No, but I think I know who might. There's a woman named Vivian. She's high up in the organization, but I've seen her looking conflicted. Like maybe she's having second thoughts. If you could get to her." The sound of footsteps in the hallway cut their conversation short. Naomi quickly stood, plastering on a reassuring smile just as the door opened. Daniel entered, his gaze sharp as he looked between the two women. "How did it go?" he asked. Naomi turned to him, her expression a perfect blend of satisfaction and relief. "I think we've made real progress," she said. "Olivia understands now, don't you?" Olivia nodded, her own acting skills coming to the fore. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I'm sorry for my moment of weakness. It won't happen again." Daniel's posture relaxed slightly. "Excellent," he said. "I knew you were the right person for this job, Naomi. You have a real gift for connecting with people." As they left Olivia's room, Naomi's mind was whirling. She had to find a way to contact Vivian to see if she really could be turned into an ally. But more importantly, she needed to get this new information to her team outside. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Naomi crept out of her room. She had noticed a blind spot in the security cameras near the staff lounge, a place where she might be able to use her hidden phone without being detected. Her heart pounded as she typed out a message, summarizing everything she had learned from Olivia. Just as she hit send, a noise behind her made her whirl around. Vivian stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing out of bed, Naomi?" she asked softly. Naomi's mind raced, searching for a plausible excuse. But before she could speak, Vivian held up a hand. "Don't bother lying," she said. "I know you're not what you seem. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Naomi's heart raced as she stared at Vivian, her mind frantically searching for a way out of this situation. But as she studied the older woman's face, she saw something unexpected. A glimmer of hope, perhaps even understanding. Naomi began, but Vivian cut her off with a raised hand. "Not here," Vivian whispered, glancing nervously around. "Follow me." Without waiting for a response, Vivian turned and walked briskly down the corridor. Naomi hesitated for a split second before following, her instinct screaming at her that this could be a trap. But she also knew that if Vivian had wanted to expose her, she could have done so already. They made their way through the winding halls of the Glamour Girls facility, Vivian leading them to a part of the building Naomi had never seen before. Finally, they stopped in front of a nondescript door. Vivian pulled out a key card, swiped it, and ushered Naomi inside. The room was small and sparsely furnished, with no windows and only a single desk with a computer. Vivian locked the door behind them and turned to face Naomi. "This is one of the few rooms in the facility without surveillance," Vivian explained, her voice low. "We can talk freely here." Naomi nodded, still wary. "How long have you known?" she asked. Vivian sighed, suddenly looking much older and more tired than Naomi had ever seen her. "I've had my suspicions for a while," she admitted. "You're good, but there were little things. Moments where the real you shone through." She paused, fixing Naomi with an intense gaze. "But more importantly, I recognized something in you. The same thing I see every time I look in the mirror. Doubt, guilt, a desperate desire to make things right." Naomi's breath caught in her throat. "You want out," she realized. Vivian nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've been part of this organization for years," she said. "At first, I truly believed we were helping people, giving them a chance at a better life. But it's gone too far. The things we're doing now, it's not right. She took a shaky breath before continuing. I've wanted to leave for a long time, but I was afraid. They have so much power, so many connections. I didn't think I could escape. But then you came along, and I started to hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out. Naomi's mind was reeling. This was more than she could have hoped for, a high-ranking insider willing to turn, but she had to be sure. Why should I trust you? She asked bluntly. How do I know this isn't some kind of test? Vivian nodded as if she had been expecting this question. You're right to be cautious, she said, but I'm willing to prove myself. She turned to the computer on the desk and began typing rapidly. What I'm about to show you is highly classified, she explained as she worked. It's a complete breakdown of Glamour Girl's operations, every facility, every client, every dirty secret. If I were still loyal to them, I would never risk exposing this information. As Vivian pulled up document after document, Naomi's eyes widened. This was a goldmine of intelligence, far more than she had ever hoped to obtain. We need to get this out, Naomi said urgently. My team on the outside... Already taken care of, Vivian interrupted, holding up a small flash drive. I've been compiling this information for months, waiting for the right moment. Everything's on here, encrypted, of course, but I couldn't figure out how to get it out safely. She held out the drive to Naomi. I'm trusting you with this. It's everything we need to bring Glamour Girls down. Can you get it to your people? Naomi took the drive, her hand trembling slightly. Yes, she said firmly. I can make it happen. But what about you? They'll know it was you who leaked this. Vivian's smile was sad but determined. I've made my peace with that, she said. I've done terrible things in the name of this organization. If sacrificing myself is what it takes to make it right, then so be it. Naomi shook her head vehemently. No, she insisted. We're getting you out too. My team can protect you. Before Vivian could respond, a loud alarm began blaring throughout the facility. Both women froze, exchanging panicked looks. They know, Vivian whispered, her face pale. We must have triggered something when we accessed those files. We need to move, now. They burst out of the room only to find the hallway already filling with security personnel. Naomi's training kicked in and she grabbed Vivian's hand, pulling her in the opposite direction. This way, she shouted over the noise of the alarm. They ran through the maze-like corridors, Naomi's enhanced physical abilities allowing her to easily outpace their pursuers while supporting Vivian. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with Daniel, who was striding purposefully towards them, flanked by 2 burly guards. Naomi, Vivian, he said, his voice cold and disappointed. I had such high hopes for both of you. What a shame. Naomi didn't hesitate. She lashed out with a perfectly executed roundhouse kick, catching Daniel squarely in the chest and sending him flying backwards into his guards. Before anyone could recover, she and Vivian were off again, sprinting towards the nearest exit. They burst out into the cool night air, alarms still blaring behind them. Naomi quickly oriented herself. They were in a different part of the compound than she was used to, but she could see the main gate in the distance. Come on, she urged Vivian, who was starting to lag behind. We're almost there. But as they approached the gate, Naomi's heart sank. It was already closing, heavy steel bars sliding into place. They'd never make it in time. Just then, a sleek black car came screeching around the corner, tires squealing as it careened towards them. Naomi tensed, ready for a fight, but then the passenger window rolled down, revealing a familiar face. Get in, shouted Jake, Naomi's handler from her original mission. Hurry! Relief flooded through Naomi as she yanked open the back door, all but shoving Vivian inside before diving in after her. The car peeled away just as the first gunshots rang out, bullets pinging harmlessly off the reinforced body. As they sped away from the Glamour Girls' compound, Naomi finally allowed herself to relax slightly. She turned to Jake, who was grinning at her from the front seat. Cutting it a bit close, weren't you? She asked, unable to keep the relief out of her voice. Jake chuckled.
Hey, we got here as fast as we could after your message came through. You're lucky we were already en route based on your earlier intel. His expression grew serious as he glanced at Vivian. I assume this is our new friend?
Naomi nodded, making quick introductions. As they sped through the night, she filled Jake in on everything that had happened, including the flash drive full of incriminating information.
This is big,
Jake said, whistling low.
With this, we can finally take down glamour girls for good. You've done amazing work, Naomi.
Naomi shook her head.
We've done amazing work,
she corrected, squeezing Vivian's hand. The older woman gave her a tremulous smile in return. As the adrenaline of their escape began to wear off, Naomi found herself overcome with emotion. It was over. She had completed her mission, saved lives, and brought down a criminal organization. But more than that, she had stayed true to herself in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform. The car wound its way through the darkened streets, heading towards a safe house where Naomi and Vivian could be debriefed and protected. As the first rays of dawn began to peek over the horizon, Naomi felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, adjusting back to her old life, dealing with the psychological effects of her time undercover, helping Vivian transition to a new identity, she knew she could handle them. She had faced her greatest fears and come out stronger on the other side. The safe house turned out to be a nondescript suburban home, its normalcy a stark contrast to the high-tech facility they had just escaped. As they pulled into the driveway, Naomi saw several agents already waiting for them, alert and ready for any potential pursuit. Jake ushered them quickly inside, where a flurry of activity immediately engulfed them. Medical personnel checked them over for injuries, while tech experts began working on decrypting the flash drive Vivian had provided. Naomi found herself in a quiet room with a kind-faced woman who introduced herself as Dr. Landon, a psychologist specializing in debriefing undercover operatives.
How are you feeling, Naomi?
Doctor, Landon asked gently. Naomi took a deep breath, considering the question. Overwhelmed, she admitted. Relieved, but also a bit lost. It's like I've been living in a different world, and now I have to figure out how to be myself again. Dr. Landon nodded understandingly. That's a very common reaction, she assured Naomi. You've been through an incredibly intense experience, one that required you to suppress your true self for an extended period. It's going to take time to fully process everything and reintegrate. They talked for hours, Naomi pouring out all the conflicting emotions she had experienced during her time with glamour girls, the fear, the guilt, the moments of doubt where she had almost lost herself in her cover identity. You showed remarkable resilience, Dr. Landon said warmly. Many agents in your position might have broken under the pressure or lost sight of their mission. The fact that you were able to maintain your core self while still playing your role convincingly is truly impressive. Naomi felt a flush of pride at the praise, but also a lingering unease. But what if part of me enjoyed it? She asked hesitantly. There were moments when I felt so powerful, so confident in my new identity. Is that wrong? Dr. Landon shook her head. Not at all, she said firmly. It's natural to find aspects of a role appealing, especially one that was designed to be attractive and empowering. The important thing is that you recognized it for what it was, a role, and didn't let it consume you. As their session wound down, Dr. Landon gave Naomi some exercises to help her center herself and reconnect with her pre-mission identity. Remember, she said, recovery is a process. Be patient with yourself, and don't hesitate to reach out if you need support. Feeling emotionally drained, but somehow lighter, Naomi emerged from the room to find the safe house buzzing with excitement. Jake rushed up to her, his face alight with triumph.
We did it,
he said, grinning from ear to ear.
The information Vivian provided checks out. We've already got teams moving on multiple glamour girls facilities across the country. It's a massive operation, but we've got them dead to rights.
Naomi felt a surge of satisfaction, tinged with a hint of sadness for all the people who had been victimized by the organization. What about the clients? She asked. The people who were transformed? Jake's expression sobered slightly.
That's complicated, he admitted. Many of them were willing participants, at least initially. But there are also a lot of victims who were coerced or manipulated. We're working on a plan to offer support and, where possible, reversal procedures for those who want them.
Naomi nodded, relieved that steps were being taken to help those affected.
And Vivian? She asked. How is she doing?
She's been incredibly helpful, Jake said.
Her insider knowledge is proving invaluable as we work to dismantle Glamour Girl's network. We're setting her up with a new identity, witness protection, the works.
Just then, Vivian herself appeared, looking tired but determined.
Naomi,
she said warmly, I wanted to thank you. Without your courage, I might never have found the strength to do the right thing. Naomi embraced the older woman, feeling a surge of affection. We did this together, she said firmly. You're the real hero here. As the day wore on, Naomi found herself growing increasingly restless. The safe house, while comfortable, felt confining after the intensity of the past few weeks. She longed to feel the sun on her face, to walk down a street without constantly watching for threats or maintaining a cover. Sensing her mood, Jake approached her with a suggestion.
How would you feel about a little field trip? He asked. We've secured the area, and I think it might do you good to get out for a bit.
Naomi eagerly agreed, and soon they were driving through quiet suburban streets. As they cruised along, Jake filled her in on some of the developments in the case.
We've already made over 100 arrests, he said. Daniel, Dr. Marsh, most of the top brass at Glamour Girls, they're all in custody. We're also working on tracking down their political connections. Senator Harrison, for instance, is facing some pretty serious questions about his involvement.
Naomi nodded, a mix of emotions swirling through her. She was glad justice was being served, but she couldn't help feeling a twinge of sympathy for some of the people she had gotten to know during her time undercover. They had done terrible things, yes, but many of them had genuinely believed they were helping people. As if reading her thoughts, Jake continued.
It's okay to have complicated feelings about all this, you know? These people were your whole world for weeks. It's natural to feel some connection to them, even knowing what they did.
Naomi smiled gratefully at his understanding. It's just strange, she said.
Part of me is so relieved it's over, but another part almost misses the excitement, the sense of purpose. Is that crazy? Jake shook his head. Not at all. It's a common feeling among agents after a big operation. The key is to channel that energy into something positive. Speaking of which, he trailed off, looking slightly nervous. What is it? Naomi asked, curious about his sudden change in demeanor.
Jake took a deep breath before continuing.
The agency is really impressed with how you handled this mission, he said. They're talking about fast-tracking you for more advanced training, maybe even some leadership positions.
Naomi's eyes widened in surprise. It was an incredible opportunity, one that she had dreamed of when she first joined the agency. But after everything she had been through, she found herself hesitating. I don't know, she said slowly. Part of me is thrilled at the idea. But another part, I think I need some time to process everything, to figure out who I really am after all this. Jake nodded understandingly.
Of course, he said. There's no rush to decide. Take all the time you need. Whatever you choose, you've got a bright future ahead of you, Naomi.
As they drove back to the safe house, Naomi found herself thinking about all the paths now open to her. She could dive deeper into undercover work, using her newfound skills to take on even more challenging missions, or she could step back, maybe work on developing resources to help other agents deal with the psychological toll of deep cover operations. For the first time in weeks, she felt truly free to make her own choices, to shape her own destiny. It was both exhilarating and a little terrifying. Back at the safe house, Naomi sought out Vivian, finding the older woman sitting quietly in the backyard, basking in the late afternoon sun. "How are you holding up?" Naomi asked, settling into a chair beside her. Vivian gave her a wan smile. "It's overwhelming," she admitted. "I've spent so long living in fear, always looking over my shoulder. The idea that it's really over, that I can start fresh, it doesn't quite feel real yet." Naomi reached out and squeezed her hand. "It will," she said reassuringly.
"One day at a time, right?"
They sat in companionable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Vivian spoke again, her voice soft but determined. "I've been thinking about what I want to do next," she said. "All those people we hurt, all the lives we disrupted, I want to make amends somehow." Naomi nodded encouragingly. "That's admirable. Do you have any ideas?" Vivian's eyes lit up with a spark of passion. "I was thinking, what if we could use some of the technology, the techniques we developed at Glamour Girls, but for good? Not to change people's identities, but to help them. Burn victims, people with severe scarring or disfigurements. We could really improve their lives." Naomi found herself smiling at Vivian's enthusiasm. It was a beautiful idea, taking something that had been used for such nefarious purposes and transforming it into a force for good. "I think that's wonderful," she said sincerely. "And I'm sure with your insider knowledge, you could really make a difference." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the peaceful suburban scene, Naomi felt a sense of contentment settle over her. The road ahead might be uncertain, but she faced it with hope and determination. The next few days passed in a blur of debriefings, medical checkups, and planning sessions. Naomi worked closely with the agency's tech team, helping them navigate the wealth of information Vivian had provided. With each passing hour, the full scope of Glamour Girls' operations became clearer, and the impact of their takedown more significant. One afternoon, as Naomi was poring over some financial records, Jake burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "You're not going to believe this," he said, brandishing a tablet. "Remember how we thought Senator Harrison might be involved? Well, it turns out he was just the tip of the iceberg." He pulled up a series of documents on the screen, showing Naomi a complex web of connections linking Glamour Girls to various political figures, celebrities, and business tycoons. "They had their hooks in everywhere," Jake explained. "Politicians who owed them favors, celebrities who used their services to maintain their youthful appearances, business leaders who relied on them for aggressive negotiations. It's staggering." Naomi felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the true extent of Glamour Girls' influence. "So what happens now?" she asked. Jake's expression was grim but determined. "Now we start cleaning house. It's going to be messy. There will be scandals, resignations, probably some international incidents. But it needs to be done. We can't let this kind of corruption continue." As the implications of this sank in, Naomi found herself reevaluating her earlier hesitation about taking on more responsibility within the agency. Perhaps this was exactly the kind of work she was meant to do, rooting out corruption, protecting the vulnerable, making a real difference in the world. Later that evening, Naomi sought out Dr. Landon for another counseling session. As they talked, she found herself opening up about her conflicting feelings regarding her future. "Part of me wants to dive right back in," she admitted, "to use everything I've learned to take on even bigger challenges. But another part is scared. What if I lose myself again? What if I can't maintain that balance between my true self and my cover identity?" Dr. Landon listened attentively before responding. "Those are valid concerns," she said. "But I want you to consider something. The fact that you're asking these questions, that you're so aware of the potential pitfalls, is actually a very good sign. It means you're going into this with your eyes open." She leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Naomi, you've shown incredible resilience and adaptability. You maintained your core values in an extremely challenging situation. That strength doesn't just disappear. If you choose to continue this work, you'll be doing so with a much deeper understanding of yourself and the risks involved." Naomi nodded slowly, feeling a sense of clarity begin to emerge.
So you think I should accept the advanced training? Dr. Landon smiled. I think you should do whatever feels right to you. But I also think you have a unique set of skills and experiences that could be incredibly valuable in this field. Just remember, taking care of yourself, maintaining your sense of self, that's not just important for your well-being. It's crucial for your effectiveness as an agent. As Naomi left the session, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She sought out Jake, finding him in the makeshift command center that had been set up in the safe house's living room. "I've made a decision," she said without preamble. "I want to accept the advanced training. I want to be part of dismantling networks like Glamour Girls, of making sure nothing like this can happen again." Jake's face broke into a wide grin. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said. "We're going to need agents like you if we're going to tackle the kind of wide-scale corruption we're uncovering." Over the next few days, plans were put in motion. Naomi would undergo a period of decompression and additional psychological evaluation before beginning her advanced training. Vivian, with her wealth of insider knowledge, would be working closely with a team of ethicists and medical professionals to develop guidelines for the responsible use of identity-altering technologies. As for the victims of Glamour Girls, a massive support network was being established. Those who wanted to reverse their transformations would be given access to the best medical care available. Others who chose to maintain their new identities would be provided with counseling and other resources to help them adjust. The night before Naomi was set to leave the safe house, a small gathering was held. It wasn't exactly a celebration. Too much harm had been done for that. But there was a sense of cautious optimism in the air, a feeling that real change was possible. As Naomi looked around at the faces of her colleagues, at Vivian, who had become something of a mentor to her, she felt a surge of emotion. This mission had changed her, there was no doubt about that. But she was starting to realize that maybe that change wasn't entirely a bad thing. She was stronger now, more aware of her own capabilities and limitations. She had faced her fears, confronted difficult ethical dilemmas, and come out the other side with a deeper understanding of herself and the world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Naomi knew she was ready to face them. Not as the perfect, artificially enhanced version of herself that Glamour Girls had tried to create, but as her true self, flaws, doubts, and all. As the evening wound down, Naomi found a quiet moment alone with Vivian. The older woman looked at her with a mix of pride and something like wistfulness. "You know," Vivian said softly, "when I first met you, I saw something special. A strength, a resilience that went beyond whatever enhancements Glamour Girls had given you. I'm so glad I was right about you." Naomi felt tears prick at her eyes. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said. "You took an incredible risk trusting me." Vivian shook her head. "We took a risk trusting each other," she corrected. "And look what came of it. We've got a long road ahead of us, but I truly believe we can make a difference." As they hugged goodbye, Naomi felt a sense of completion. This chapter of her life was ending, but a new one was just beginning. She had no illusions that it would be easy. The work ahead would be challenging, often heartbreaking. But she also knew it would be worthwhile. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.